It's a good question. So first of all, let's just start with kind of why is it that the cost of pharmaceutical development is going up?
Yeah.
Even though all the trends you cited earlier of why it should be going down.
Yeah.
As the biology is much better understood, you can outsource a lot more.
We have computational drug design.
Discovery. You would think that it should be going down.
Yes.
So the first reason why it's going up is that a lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been discovered.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first thing that people often forget, is that we now have great therapy, for diabetes, we have therapies for multiple sclerosis, we have therapies for HIV and AIDS, we have incredible new advances in oncology. So as a result of all this, all which is great, the bar out there for what do you have to have a better therapy is really high. Mm-hmm. So it's much harder now because your standard of what you have to beat is good, and that's all good.
Yeah.
So that I think is actually the number one contributing reason to why the cost is going up, because actually the easy stuff has been done. The second reason, and the pendulum has started to swing back, is that for several years the size of clinical trials that are required increased quite a bit, and the amount of testing that goes into clinical trials, and the things that you actually have to test for in terms of blood work, in terms of MRIs, in terms of scanning. So actually the cost per patient is much higher. And there's a good reason for that, which is there's a lot better diagnostics now. So actually when you're doing clinical trials, there's a lot more things you look for than you did before, but all that costs money. So the cost of a patient in an oncology trial might be $40,000 or $50,000 per patient, whereas it might have been $10,000 or $20,000 20 years ago, mm-hmm. because there's a lot more stuff you can test for now. You can do all this genetic testing, you can do all the blood testing, things that you didn't have before. So I think that's kind of why it's gone up. So in looking at kind of what are the big trends that are exciting, I actually do think a lot of the computational discovery work is really interesting. And it's, it was funny, is that approach was tried back in the 1990s. It was called rational drug design. Mm-hmm. It was actually the first time there was sort of modeling that was done, and it was thought that, you could come up with a model for what the receptor looked like, you could make the drug that fit exactly into it, and it's like anything, it didn't turn out to be that simple. But now, with the machine learning computational models, you can factor in a lot more factors than you could back then. Because a lot of then it was both, there were safety issues that were people understood, there were side effect issues that understood, formulation issues. A lot of the people, in the old technologies didn't understand that you could create all these drugs, but they were basically brick dust, and you couldn't formulate them into something that people could take. Mm-hmm. And now all that can be factored into the model. So I actually think that that's really promising. I also think the fact that you now have much better genetic understanding, you have much better proteomics understanding, you have a much better understanding of the biology mechanisms going on. And I think with CRISPR, you can now actually engineer drugs much better, and you can engineer the models to test the drugs much better. So I think all of that's very promising.